It was supposed to be another routine day at the marine park, a sunny afternoon on Vancouver Island. Families smiling, orcas gliding, trainers laughing, but beneath the shimmering surface of Sealands Orca pool, something stirred, something dark, something ancient, and on that February day in 1991, it waited before Kelty Burn to fall. In Kelty Burn was a star, not the Hollywood kind, but kind that lit up any room she entered. Tall, athletic, full of energy, she was a competitive swimmer, a marine biology student, and a part-time orca trainer at Sealand of the Pacific in British Columbia, Canada. Sealand wasn't SeaWorld, it was smaller, less glamorous, a little rundown, but it had who was Kelty Burn. Something few other parks in the world could boast. 3 orcas in one tank. Her deer too, the dominant Marley Nutka, for quieter, watchful but unpredictable, and Tickum the IA largest, yet youngest and lowest ranking male, still growing, still learning, still waiting, still waiting. Seaky worked with sea lions mostly, but day, that fateful day, she'd been asked to help clean up near the orca tank. It was February 20, 1991, and the pool was watching. The orca tank at Sealand was nothing like the vast open exhibit zoo. Imagine today, it was cramped, shallow, and enclosed by metal gates and nets. The orcas often floated listlessly, with rake marks on their sides from one another's teeth, visible evidence of a strict dominance hierarchy. Tickum was often seen hovering at the back, avoiding the 2 females she'd been brought in from Iceland, ripped from his pod as a calf and raised in confinement. Hadn't understand freedom, but he did understand frustration. He understood pain he had been trained using. Food deprivation. When he didn't perform, he didn't eat. The trainers kept their distance the day of the attack, specially from him, but Clee was new, and she wasn't afraid. She shouldn't have been nerfed. Edge, but protocols were loose. The park was short-staffed, and no one imagined what was about to happen. Witnesses would later recall it all happened in a blink. Clee walked along the narrow walkway beside the pool, carrying a bucket. One step, a wet spot, a slip splash. The water swallowed her. Gasp shouts, a scramble from staff to respond, but the orcas responded faster. They didn't swim away. They swam toward her. The water churned. Kelty surfaced, screaming for help. One of the whale shader 2 perhaps grabbed her by the leg and dragged her under. Seconds passed, then she surfaced, a dead choking, flailing. Another orca pulled her back down. Onlookers, staff, trainers, and a few remaining guests stood paralyzed. The rescue pole was too short, the emergency response too slow, and the whales weren't playing. They were passing her between each other like a toy, like prey. Inside the park, a trainer hit the emergency alarm. Someone shouted into a radio, "Get the med pool up," and tried to separate them. But the underwater gates were manual. They took time, and the orcas weren't cooperating from the surface. Kelty could be seen surfacing briefly, gasping, reaching, then yanked under again. Tickum had her now. He held her tight, but didn't kill her immediately. That the attack wasn't how it worked. There was a darkness in his eyes. Observers said later, something calculating, zimming, curious, and it wasn't stopping. Another trainer tossed fish into the med pool, trying to lure the whales away. Nothing. They tried banging buckets, shouting, waving, clapping. Nothing. One oft orcas let her go. She swam to the edge, so close she touched the side, but just before she could be pulled out, an orca rammed her from below. She screamed, her body arched into the earth and vanished beneath the waves once more, and this time she didn't come back for over 10 minutes. The orcas continued swimming erratically. Agitated, circling trainers cried. Guests were evacuated. Emergency services were called, but it was too late when they finally retrieved her body. She was limp, cold, lifeless, a young, promising life lost to the black water. What happened to Kelty? burn wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning, a scream in the dark that went unanswered for far too long. And the most terrifying part, this wasn't the end, it was only the beginning of a chain of deadly events. Tied to the same orca, Tickham wasn't done seen. Ate the autopsy 3 days later. Cleburne's body, the orcas involved, leave cold on a metal table. The autopsy confirmed it, drowning, multiple contusions, blunt force trauma. But more chilling than her injuries was how preventable her death had been. The reports made it sound clinical, but there was nothing sterile about how she died. The whales hadn't just pulled her under, they had played with her, hunted her like wolves. There were bite marks. The coroner whispered to a colleague, rake marks on her back and legs, deep ones. The silence around SEAL's tanks deepened, Sealand went into damage. Control mode press statements were brief, mechanical. This was a tragic accident. Our hearts go out to Kelty's family. Safety measures are being reviewed, but internally panic. The staff had been raising concerns for months. They had noticed aggression between the whales, especially from Hedaya toward Tickham. They knew Tickham wasn't just a big baby, he was isolated, undertrained, and kept in a space barely large enough for a dolphin, had never been let out to swim, never allowed sunlight outside. The tank, a 36 feet concrete coffin for his mind. He's snapping, one trainer said to another. They all are. Someone had recorded the incident. A camcorder from the upper walkway, partially obstructed, shaky. You could heart splash, you could hear the screams, you could hear the terror in her voice, and you could hear the aftermath, water boiling with black and white flesh. The video was seized, it never made it to the public. Whispers said it was too disturbing, others said it would have killed Sealand overnight. Instead, Park limped on for months, but the public was uneasy. Ticket sales dropped, protesters started appearing at the gates with signs reading "Free Tillum," "No tank can hold the sea." Clee didn't have Eto die. Scene 11. The haunting of the trainers who had worked with Clee changed. Some quit, some stopped working with Orcas entirely. Others had nightmares about her reaching for Thege, about her fingers brushing the concrete, about the moment she disappeared for the last time. And always in those dreams it was T-Com's eye just beneath the surface, staring back. By late 1991, Sealand made the announcement due to changing public interest. Sealand of the Pacific will closing its doors permanently, but the Orcas remained, and then a deal was made behind closed doors. A Florida-based park, Richard Glitzia, famous for splash zones and smiling dolphins, offered to take all 3 Orcas SeaWorld. They saw potential in Tickham, big, strong, imposing. He'd make a great the legacy of silence addition to the shows. The trainers in Canada warned them, they begged them not to trust him, but SeaWorld had a bigger stage, a bigger budget, and a much bigger appetite for risk. Tickham era edit. SeaWorld Orlando in 1992. He was 26 feet long, weighed over 11,000 pounds, and had a body count. But brochures didn't say that he was rebranded as the Gentle Giant, the massive whale with a mysterious past. At first he performed, while he was still controlled by the same tools. Positivity enforced in food, deprivation, strict isolation. When he disobeyed, but the trainers weren't told of everything. New hires didn't even know his history. They just called him TLI. 7 years after Kelty Byron's death, Tickham struck again, but this time it was after hours. A man named Daniel Jukes was phone, naked, lifeless, draped across Tickham's back. The next morning he had stayed in the park after hours. The official story was vague: trespasser, accidental drowning, but the coroner's report, what we learned, told a darker truth: lacerations, genital trauma, blunt force injuries. Tickham had not just killed him, he had mutilated him, and still the shows went on. It wasn't until February 24, 2010, exactly 19 years and 4 days after Kelty's death, that the world would finally learn the name Telecom Hewers, performing at a Dine with Shamu show with veteran trainer Dawn Bronco. She was experienced side-restic, beloved, and she never made a mistake. But when the show ended, Tickum didn't swim away and he grabbed her by the ponytail and pulled her into the water before the eyes of guests eating their lunches. He drowned her, shattered her bones, and refused to release her body for nearly 45 minutes. This time it couldn't be hidden. This time it was caught on film. Scene 16. Blackfish. Thewald learned of Tickum's past, of Sealand, of Kelty. Bayern, of the quiet death that started it all. 2013 documentary Blackfish laid it all bare. Footage, whistleblowers, secrets, people gasped, Creed protested, and slowly SeaWorld's image began to unravel. Kelty. Burns' name was finally remembered, Nate, just as a tragic footnote, but as a beginning. She was 20 years old when she died. Smart, driving, kind. She wanted to work with marine life. She didn't know she was working with something broken. Closing message. Be captivity. The pool where she died was drained. Years ago the gates rusted, the glass cracked, but those who were there that still remember the sound. The sound of her screaming and the silence that final scene. The I-1 trainer, now retired, later said in an interview, "I looked till us